Some timeline feature is a unique approach to organizing your story's events chronologically. Unlike basic timeline tools, this feature uniquely combines flexibility with structure to help you master your story's chronology. So, what actually makes it special? It lets you organize your story's events like nested building blocks. Start with big story periods, break them into smaller segments, then create sequences of events, all while keeping everything perfectly ordered. Whether you're writing in our world using regular dates or crafting a fantasy realm with its own calendar system, the timeline adapts to your needs. The real magic happens when you connect your events to the timeline. Instead of just listing things in order, you can see how different parts of your story flow together. Characters' journeys, plot developments, and world-changing moments all find their perfect place in time. And the best part? As your story evolves, your timeline easily grows and changes with it. It's like having a smart visual map of your story's journey, one that helps you keep track of when things happen while showing you how all the pieces of your narrative fit together. Getting started with your timeline. When you first open the timeline section, you'll have a clean slate waiting for your story. Click on the Create New Timeline button to begin creating your timeline. Give your timeline a name that represents your story. It could be something simple like Main Story Timeline or something more creative that fits your narrative. Quick note, you can only have one main timeline per project. So if you want to create another timeline, you'd have to delete the current one to start a new one. Now comes an important choice. You'll need to decide between using regular calendar dates, like, say, January 2024, or creating a fantasy calendar system. If you're writing a story set in our world, go with the regular calendar. But if you're crafting a fantasy world with its own time system, choose the fantasy calendar option. Take a moment to think about this choice because once you've picked one, you'll need to stick with it. You can't change the calendar system once the timeline is created. If you simply want to have your events aligned chronologically, it's best to use the real-world date calendar. I only recommend using the fantasy calendar dates if your particular story needs it. You can create your own custom calendar in the fantasy calendar section of the application. Before we continue, I think it's important that we first talk about the structure of timelines within the ASM application. Think of your story's timeline like a set of nesting blocks, each layer helping you organize your story's time in more detail. A single timeline consists of three parts: the timeline period, timeline segments, and the timeline sequences. Starting with periods. Timeline periods are your largest time blocks, the big chapters of your story's history, like the Golden Age or the War Years. These periods help you split your story into major historical or narrative chunks. They're perfect for marking significant eras or major shifts in your story's world. Timeline segments live inside periods, breaking them into more manageable pieces. If a period is like a book, then segments are like its chapters. They help you organize specific storylines or connected events within each period. For example, within the War Years period, you might have segments like the first battle or the peace negotiations. Timeline sequences are your most detailed layer, living inside segments. They're where you arrange your actual story events in order. Think of sequences as scenes in your story. They group related events that flow together, like all the events that happen during a character's journey or the chain of events leading to a major plot twist. So in practice, it flows like this. Your story has major periods. Each period contains focused segments, and those segments hold sequences of your actual story events. This structure helps you keep everything organized while still being flexible enough to grow with your story. Now, continuing on with creating your timeline, click the View Timeline button to pull up the actual timeline view. The first thing you'll need to do is create a period. Think of periods as the major chapters of your story's history. Let's say you're writing a fantasy story. You might have periods like the time of peace, followed by the dark years. Or if you're writing a family saga, you might have periods like the early years and the next generation. To create a period, click this plus button at the bottom right of your screen. Then, give your period a name and description. If you're using regular dates, you can set when this period starts and ends. For fantasy calendars, you'll use your custom dates instead. Once you've created your first period, you'll have a card view that displays the current period. Within this card view, you can create your segments and your sequences as well. Next, we'll need to create a timeline segment. This needs to be done before we can add events to the timeline sequence. So within each period, you can create segments to organize your story better. Think of segments as chapters within your larger story sections. To add a segment, open your period and look for the Add Segment button. Name your segment something that helps you remember what happens during this part of the story. Now we're getting to the detailed part of our timeline: sequences. A sequence is like a string of connected events that tell a part of your story. Maybe it's all the events that happen during a crucial battle, or the series of events that lead to two characters falling in love. To create a sequence, go into your segment and click Add Sequence. Because segments can contain multiple sequences, you'll need to select which segment this particular sequence is a part of. Next, give sequence a name that helps you track what's happening in this part of the story. This is where you'll start connecting actual events from your story to your timeline. Here's where everything comes together. When you're ready to add events to your sequence, click Add Events. You'll see a list of all the events you've created in your story. Pick the ones that belong in this sequence and set their dates, either regular calendar dates or your fantasy calendar dates, depending on what you chose at the start. The nice thing is that once you add dates to your events, they'll automatically arrange themselves in order. This helps you see exactly how your story flows from one event to the next. Once you add an event to the timeline, the event itself will automatically be updated. You can see this in the Attributes section of that particular event you added to the timeline. It will display the dates you added the event to. The beauty of organizing your timeline this way is that you can see your whole story laid out before you. Start with your big periods, break them down into segments that make sense, create sequences to group related events, and then fill in all your story events. Remember, you don't have to get it perfect the first time. You can always go back and adjust things as your story develops. Add new periods, rearrange segments, or update event dates as needed. Your timeline will grow and change along with your story. Think of it like building a house. You start with the foundation, your periods, add the walls, your segments, create the rooms, your sequences, and finally, fill it with furniture, which is your events. Each piece works together to create a complete picture of your story's journey through time.